Photo Circle is, I think, one of the most wonderful platform for young photographer from Nepal, uh, and also from somewhere else, because everybody when they go to Nepal, they go to Photo Circle, and I think it's something very similar what we're trying to do here. So I'm really happy to present NayanTara.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you, Wasif. Thank you, Chobi Mela, for enabling this platform. Did I touch something and turn everything off? Or that was a good way to start. um, okay, while the power comes back on. I think some people are stuck in town today. I hope they'll be able to make their way here and join us safely. But this is my third Chobi Mela, and it's really exciting to be coming back every 2 years and meeting with friends and making new ones. This is a really, really vibrant platform, and we feel very lucky to be just an hour away by plane. We keep joking that it seems to take longer to get from Dhaka airport to Dhanmondi than to get from Dhaka airport to Kathmandu. So we're really close by, and I think we've tried to make the most out of that distance and the close ties that we have shared with Drik and Parchala over the last 6 years that we've been working. I'll tell you a little bit about Photo Circle, just for background. We have some stuff out in front too, so please feel free to pick stuff up. Photo Circle was a platform we set up 6 years ago, my partner Bhushan and I, along with other friends, because we really felt like there was a void in terms of a photographic community in Nepal. And it started out really informally, and then in our first year itself, we met Shahidul, and of course, in true Shahidul fashion, he took us, swept us under his wings, and he was so generous and so kind with his guidance and support, and we've really, I think, managed to grow because of that. We've been doing primarily focusing on education, creating possibilities for photographers to learn and work, because there are no photo schools. There is no Pathshala in Kathmandu, unfortunately. And also we've been focusing on then getting the work out there through various distribution channels. We do a lot of exhibitions. We've started publishing books. Of course, we work with the local, and we try to work with the regional media to get work out. And we also informally work as an agency, because we don't have one, a formal agency, photo agency in Nepal. But about 2 years ago, we had been seeing and getting really inspired by some really amazing archival projects. And like Wasif said, there is no photo archive that exists in Nepal, and when you look up Nepali history, you end up with pictures of kings and queens, pretty much, because, and I think I have one here to show you. Not sure if it's showing up though. I'll tell you a little bit about Nepali history. I won't bore you too much, but for the longest time, Nepal was never colonized, but for many, many hundreds of years, we were ruled by our own aristocratic classes, the Ranas and Shahs primarily, prime ministers, kings and queens. And this is Jangabahadur Rana and his queen, a very well-known figure in Nepali history. And this is what most of us see in our history books when we think about, when we are taught history. We see very little else other than that kind of a very particular past of power. And so, and Nepal, of course, is going through very big political transformations. The first successful democratic movement took place in 1990 that gave way to a constitutional monarchy. So the king stepped down for the first time after hundreds of years to give way to democratic political parties. And then in 2006, there was a Maoist insurgency that was launched, and we were pretty much in civil conflict for a while, 10 years, in 1996, I'm sorry. And then in 2006, there was a popular movement, a revolution, and then the king finally was thrown out, and the Maoists joined mainstream politics. And now we are I believe, we're quite a mouthful, we're a federal democratic republic of Nepal. I have to think very hard to remember this. And we have a Maoist prime minister. But you know, over the years, through all this transformation, there's been a lot of discussion around issues of inclusion, because for the longest time there was a lot of exclusion. And so we've thought this was an apt, if ever, time to begin a project that begins to look at at other histories that were left out for so long. So we started it by calling it retelling histories, trying to stress on the fact that there is more than one history that was told to us. And we started with these family photo albums that we began to unearth. Of course, we had many at home as well within our friends and family circles. But we started to actively reach out to more people to tell them that we would like to welcome their photographs and their stories into this repository. And slowly we began getting a lot of photographs and stories. You know, Wasif mentioned the Indian Memory Project that Anusha Yadav runs. It has been such an inspiration to see her work. We were also introduced to the Arab Image Foundation quite a few years, actually for the first time in Chobi Mela 4 years ago. We met Yasmin here, and Yasmin is showing her work, collaborative work, at the Shilpakala this time. So it was an added treat to see that this time. And so we began in a similar way to begin to collect stories. This particular image was contributed to us by Kesari Swal. And for each image, we ask the contributor or another family member to give us text as well, you know, because the context is so important. And so the great-granddaughter of the people who are in this image wrote a text for us, and I'll tell you the story. This photograph was taken in a studio in Bombay in 1935. Kulbadur Maharzan, my maternal great-grandfather, and this is the contributor writing, is seated next to a friend from Kathmandu. Nobody in my family seems to know anything about this friend, though. Kulbadur was a chef at Sankar Shamsher Gangabadur Rana's palace in Kathmandu. He got the job because his father, Kulbir Maharzan, who had impressed one of the Ranas with his kua making skills. Kua is a kind of sweet that's popular. Despite being a Japu from Tiagal Tol, Kulbir was able to distance himself and his descendants from their traditional occupation of farming. The influence of Kulbadur's acquaintance with the Ranas is evident in his personal presentation, especially his gopte moustache, the shape. When we walked out of his house in Tiagal Tol, people used to come out to look at him, says Kanchi Badai, Kulbadur's daughter. Kulbadur's grandson adds, he got to travel to many places because he was one of Sankar Samsher's favorites. My uncle and mother note with pride that his passport number was 271. Kulbadur was probably one of the first people from Tiagal, his community, to travel outside Nepal. So this was a story that was sort of, you know, in the shadows of the people who we saw a picture of earlier, and slowly we were beginning to collect some of them. This is another image from the same family. As you notice, it's taken in a studio that is very much sort of trying to imitate the colonial style of picture taking, and the contributor, this was her mother and her grandmother decked out in their finest for a studio portrait. This is an image from a rural part in Nepal, away from the studios. It was contributed by Govinda Adhikari, and the text was contributed by his son, Praveen Adhikari. I'll read the story. This dreamlike image was taken in 1970. Captain Narbadur Thapa joined the British Army during World War II, worked up the ranks as a medic, and returned home to find that his wife had eloped with the village headman's son, my grandfather, on my mother's side. Furious, he demanded his rights to punish his jar. Jar is a term that is used for somebody who steals your wife. The villagers of Abu hid my grandfather for 7 days, after which period Narbadur's claims could expire. Narbadur returned to the war front, fighting in Malaya. Through valor in war, he rose up to the ranks of captain. He returned to Abu Valley to serve his villagers by using his medical skills, and later when my mother developed an infection in her breast after the birth of her firstborn, Captain Narbadur helped his old Jar's wife, carrying her up to the mission hospital in Appipal, Gorkha, where timely surgery saved my mother and brother's life. This is another image from an army family. Nepal has had a long history of supplying army personnel, known around the world as Gurkhas, I guess, to various armies, including the Indian Army, the British Army, the Singapore Police, and other military services. This is a Nepali family living in Shillong in India, and the photo was contributed by Bhimi Guru. And the text. I'll tell you this one last story, I think, and then we'll move on. Ama, mother, found this image of her parents and her siblings in the attic of my grandparents' old home in Dhare Khola Parbat, tucked away with the old clothes and dried corn. Soon the photo appeared everywhere. It was enlarged and framed and hung under the big clock in the living room. Another copy of it also sat on the altar in the prayer room, right between the statues of Avalokiteshwar and Padmasambhav. There was one in the flap of the coffee table photo album and 2 more copies, each stuffed in an envelope, ready to be sent out to Ama's siblings. When relatives visited, Ama would point out how tall her mother had been for a village woman, or laugh at the matching mini-adult striped suits her brothers wore, or comment on how royal her father looked. She would reveal something new about the photo each time. Last year she told me how Baje's land, house and medals were all divided between his 2 sons, and how my mamas, uncles, had sold Baje's belongings to curators that sifted through the villages, all for 10,000 rupees. This summer, Krishna Mama gave Ama a new version of the picture. He had Ama's headshot clumsily photoshopped into it, a spurious proof of connection. "Well, you're in the photo now," he said to her as a joke. Although we laughed at its tackiness, I know she will always make space on our walls, albums, shelves for new copies. Maybe it makes this photo feel less like it is the only one of her parents, or maybe each reproduction is an opportunity for a new story. Another image that was contributed from a village school. This is the first bridge that was built over this particular river in a rural part in Nepal. Hand-colored image, as you can see. This is a endearing story about these 2 women and how in typical sort of social norms, I suppose, when young women get married, and they get married quite young, or used to, even younger, they move away to the husband's home, and most often, if that is in another village or another part of the country, they never meet again. So these are 2 childhood friends who posed for this image and then never really met again because they were married and separated. An outing. This was a wedding picture by a couple in a place called Gorkha, hand-colored too. Quite a few of the images that started coming in came with very little information and no text. So we've been trying to figure out how to cope with that. And I mean, this was one such image. We don't know who the woman is, where this was taken. We have an approximate idea because the contributor of the photograph remembers her vaguely as an old neighbor, but we don't know too much else. So in order to tackle that, we started organizing what we disguised to be writing workshops. We would invite friends, writers, anybody interested in sort of promoting the text medium, our good enemies, to come conduct workshops. And this is one example. So we would invite young people or not so young people aspiring to want to write better to then go home and look for old photographs and then come and work with us and write the texts. So in that way, we started getting some really interesting stories and texts. This was another one. These workshops were conducted in both Nepali and English, so people were welcome to choose. And we started getting some really interesting work. This was in collaboration, this particular workshop, with a local bookshop in Jamsikil called Bookworm. We did a few workshops in schools as well. It was interesting that usually they were grade 7 and 8 students, and it was interesting that they considered, 15-year-old photos to be old archival photos. So they kept coming up with these really not so old, it made us feel old at least. But it was really interesting because the schools were excited to get this going, they could plug it into English class or history class or social studies class. And then this was sort of an opportunity for the kids to actually go back home and talk to their parents and grandparents who, of course, otherwise they would never want to sit around and chat with, they'd rather go out and play. So this was a way to really encourage those interactions too. And some nice bits came out of those. And of course, all these activities, all the material we've been collecting, we've really tried to make a very conscious effort to share it with a larger public as possible every time. So for example, this is one of our workshop participants sharing his text and stories at these public presentations that we do once a month. A good audience. Everybody really, people have been reacting really positively. I mean, they find the stories to be really personal, of course, as in, it reaches out to them directly, and they enjoy it. And as much as possible, we try to exhibit and disseminate work in public spaces as well. This is a water collection spot. It's called Mangahiti in an area in Kathmandu called Patan. And this gentleman on your right, he is a great-grandson of some of the people in that picture, so he was very thrilled to be there. This was an exhibition we did at a big trade fair type of event, and people came and sat around and spent hours reading the stories. And we've been working, trying to get people engaged. These kind of public engagement events have been really useful in, of course, getting the word out, but also collecting more work, because most people end up writing to us or calling to say, I have photographs, can I be part of the archive, and it's great for us to reach out to people. We've also been trying to do some networking on other levels. This was a conference organized by the Institute of South Asian Research in Bangalore last year, and it was a conference on South Asian archives or archiving initiatives, not only photographs, but music, manuscripts, all sorts of really fascinating stuff, and it was a good learning opportunity. This was something we organized last year locally, a symposium to try to get some of the policy level people interested and aware about what we're doing. We invited people from our national archive. They're officially supposed to be, the state repository for this kind of material, but um, sadly quite defunct. We also invited a lot of libraries that have photo collections with them, but they don't really know what to do with them, with the photographs. So in the long run, we're really hoping to be working with other institutions within Nepal to link up databases and to share work in that way. More public exhibitions, what we've been showing on the streets. We published a calendar in 2010, is that right? Or 11, in 11. But sadly, they didn't sell very well, so we didn't publish another one for this year, so we don't have any to share with you, unfortunately. This was the 2012 calendar. But, you know, we thought it was a good way to get the work out again. Like I mentioned before, we work closely with the local media. This is an English language daily newspaper called Republica, and they've been very interested in providing space for this content. So it runs in daily news as well. We try to get a little bit more analytical content in as well, you know, discussions around issues of representation. This particular piece was written by he's a photographer and a collector curator from India, Sati Sharma. And of course, as much as possible, we try to get material into local language media as well. And they've been very receptive. And of course, the material is online on our website, which we hope in the next few years we will be able to really develop and ultimately make it into a searchable online database that we can plug into other networks and databases, you know, so that it can really be a resource that's available to researchers, historians, anthropologists, students, other photographers, curators, anybody interested to engage with the material. So that is slowly coming together as well. I just want to share one other collection with you. So we started out just with the family albums, but then started meeting people, photographers, who have a lot more than just their family work. This particular gentleman, Mukunda Bahadur Shrestha, is 86 now. He worked for 30 plus years as a photographer for the Nepal Tourism Board, and he was hired to, you know, as I think officially the first photographer that the government of Nepal hired to go out there and document Nepal, to show to the world, because Nepal opened up to the world in 1950. So his images were some of the first images that the world began to see of Nepal. And he was going out and making landscapes, shooting people, sort of feeding that imagination of Nepal, I think, to the world, that the world is perhaps still stuck with, even, you know, 4 or 5 decades till now. So these were some images that he made on assignment. But of course, he was also shooting for himself and his friends and family. This is from a big festival that now no longer takes place in this form. So even for Nepali audiences, this is rare. And all his works were basically not digitized. They were just lying around in bags. I'll show a little video and you'll get to meet the photographer. And these were images from his personal family albums, which we found, of course, equally, if not more, fascinating. And each of these images have stories with them. And that was him, Mukunda Bahadur Shrestha, back in the day. Quite a handsome fellow, and we will get to meet him now.
त्यो क्यामेरा लिएर डुल्ने नि क्यामेरा त्यो रोल कट क्यामेरा चाहिँ मेरो मामाकै हो त्यो पनि होइन त्यो लियो ढुलो गयो यो पनि मेरो पनि पालो कुन होइन पहिले फोटो खिच्न गाह्रो किनभने त्यो अब लाइट एन्ड सेट मिलाउनु पऱ्यो फिल्मको आशा मिलाउनु पऱ्यो स्ट्यान्ड राख्नु पऱ्यो कुन टाइम घाम लाग्छ कुन टाइम घाम लाग्छ पर्खनु पऱ्यो के गर्ने अब पहिले उठेको हुन्छ त्यो जति उठ्यो त्यति राम्रो हुने के त्यो फोटो मसँग छ
because we wanted to try to do something like a Kickstarter campaign, but we realized that we were in Nepal and you had to be a 501c registered something or the other in the United States to get on Kickstarter, and we didn't obviously have one of those things. And so we said, okay, we'll make our own Kickstarter system, and then we made a video, we put it up on our website, we sent out emails to as many people as possible because we really wanted to show Mukunda Bahadur Shrestha's work in Nepal, and we had no money for it and no sponsors and so on. And people, we just asked people to buy signed prints. And really surprisingly, a lot of people wrote in and started to purchase prints and of course support the exhibition. So it was possible. We called it Postcards and Beyond, and you know, the idea really was that he was hired to make these postcards, but he went so much further from that. And this exhibition, to curate it, we worked with this German anthropologist who's been working in Nepal for many, many years, Alban von Stockhausen, and it was a really interesting experience for us, a learning experience to try to put it together. But then it did come together. We showed it at one of the only art galleries that exist in Kathmandu, called Siddharth Art Gallery. And of course Mukundaji was thrilled because this was literally his lifetime's works being shown for the first time. And we had a whole series of talks and presentations that was scheduled throughout the exhibition period. This gentleman speaking is Mark, who's based at Yale University. He's a linguist and a professor of anthropology, Mark Turin, and he runs this database called the Himalayan, what is it called? Digital Himalayan. That's a searchable database, something that we would like to be, and we've started to now plug in content into Digital Himalaya as well. We invited other photographers to come and show their work, hoping that, you know, it would sort of be an encouragement, a motivation for them to see what was possible, what was possible to do in because like you saw, Mukundaji's works were in little plastic bags stuffed under his bed, in his closet, under his son's bed, all over the house. Some of them were not even with him anymore, and a lot of other work is still in that state all around. And before people throw it away, burn it, because we've met so many people who tell us that they've done that. They've thrown away their negatives because they didn't have hope that anything would come out of it. A lot of people who had glass plates had cleaned off the emulsion and made them into window panes. Literally made doors and windows out of their glass plates. So a lot of those kind of stories. So we've been trying to reach out to as many old photographers as possible. Just before leaving to come to Dhaka, we set up this little space because it's a tiny gallery. It's literally as big as this stage maybe, or smaller. It's 10 feet by 13 feet. It's a little box, but it's a permanent space that we can now show this work in, because otherwise we would have to pay a lot of money to rent a gallery and have these shows up. So we're working with this community. And this gallery is in Patan, which is where Mukunda Bahadur Shrestha is also from. So he's a local person there. And this is the area that the gallery is in. It's an old square in very close to like the touristic areas of Patan Darbar Square. And it's called Swatha. It's coming up very nicely now. There are lots of tourists, of course, in the season time. But also a lot of local people from Patan who have contributed photos to the archive can now go there and permanently and see it on a regular basis. We hope for this space to not only become a point of distribution, because we're hoping, I don't know if it will sell, but hoping to sell some prints here. So not only to be this point of distribution, but also hopefully a point of collection for us, because right behind the gallery, the back doors open out to this little courtyard, and there are 3 families who live on 3 sides of the courtyard, and these families have photographs, and they're very, these courtyards are built to be community spaces where people get together in the evenings, sit around and chat, cup of tea, neighbors come out, and we hope to run regular events here to invite people to come with their photographs, sit around and tell us their stories, and we will be there with a scanner and an audio recorder and document their stories. Hopefully also creating an oral history sort of component to the project. So this space we're hoping to be using in that way very soon. That's it. This is our website, and that's what we've called it, the Nepal Picture Library. And we have some stuff out in the open. I should also mention. Okay, I've been told to kill time. The next presentation will start in 30 minutes. But if any of you have any questions or you'd like to talk about anything, and then I'll also tell you a little bit about a new book that we have here with us that we just launched that features Bangladeshi, Nepali, and Norwegian young photographers who were in Kathmandu and workshopping together. But before that, I think I'll take a few minutes, let you breathe.
Do you have a software that handles the archives, and how do you systematically get things organized on a photo archive? It's a long question.
No, it's a great question, because we've been trying to figure out the whole technical aspect of this, and a lot of people gave us different kinds of advice. Some people tried to sell us their software. Of course, we didn't have money to buy it, so it wasn't going to work. But and then eventually, I think for now, what we've done, we've settled on using Lightroom, just to organize and caption and put all the metadata in. And of course, it's really helpful for us because it lets us, export stuff really quickly and do all of that on one platform. And because we've realized that a lot of, like even Digital Himalaya that I mentioned earlier, and some other archives that are being set up in other universities are using that. So for now, that's what we're using. We don't have anything fancy, anything else that's fancier.
Thank you. I asked because Rick is battling with this Rashid Talukder collection, which is over 125,000 or more of the images. So whether you have a classification scheme that you use for archiving, any other things that you have progressed towards organizing the collection, subdividing by subjects, whether you have anything that you can share.
Yep, we do divide them up into themes and categories, and just keyword everything, and then make it searchable in that way. But for now, that's what we're doing. We're hoping to find a more professional solution soon, because we're already up to, I think we're around 16,000 plus images at the moment. So before it gets too crazy to handle, we would like to do that.
That's just my point, that on a smaller number, it's easier to handle with. But as the collection grows, you will need definite software, definite things. But it might be worthwhile considering, if the costs are high, whether certain South Asian countries can cooperate.
Yes.
And get one software that anybody can, 5-6 organizations can share the costs.
Yes, actually that was something that we had been discussing with Shahidul, the possibility of developing something together and sharing it. So hopefully, he's not here this morning, otherwise this would have been a great reminder. But hopefully something like that can happen. A lot of the photographs have minimal post-production done. It depends on how we want to use it, I think. Most often we don't treat the photographs in any way. I mean, most photos are scratched and torn, and we keep a lot of that intact, because that is in itself, it gives you a sense of its history, the photograph's history. So that's something we would like to keep intact as much as possible. But sometimes when we're selling prints especially, we've started to clean it up a little bit, because people have been commenting. So I'll tell you about the project. Since 2009, we've had this exchange cooperation with Pathshala here in Dhaka, with the Oslo University College in Norway, and ourselves, Photo Circle in Kathmandu. And before each exchange, there's a 1-week workshop that takes place. And Philip Blenkinsop has been teaching this workshop for the last, 2 workshops that he's taught. And the students come in and work with him and just shoot on the streets of Kathmandu. And over the years, we had amassed such incredible images of the streets of Kathmandu that we thought, it's a real shame to just keep them stored in hard drives, and we must do something with it. So very kindly, the Norwegian Foreign Ministry made this book possible. We've published it in English and Nepali, bilingual, and it's available in Kathmandu and here today. But it features 38 young Bangladeshi, Norwegian, and Nepali photographers looking, their take on the streets of Kathmandu, and really trying to move beyond the postcard images, and show sort of the soul of a city, if you like, and go beyond the stupas and the prayer flags that Kathmandu is usually represented by. So I don't know if this is working, but I don't think you can see the full layout. The book is available here, and a lot of the photographers who are featured in it, quite a few of them are around, including Asif. and some other people. But that's it. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Chobi Mela, again.